She thought he was just a hungry boy asking for scraps. But when the millionaire finally looked into his eyes, something inside her shifted, and she had no idea that this small encounter would one day come back to haunt her. Because that single sentence, "May I have your leftovers?" Mao, wasn't just a plea for food. It was the spark of a fire that would change everything. If you've ever been underestimated, laughed at, or treated as if you were invisible, this story is going to hit deep. So hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because today's tale is about how a boy's hunger turned into power and how revenge became inevitable. The night was cold. Wind whipped through the alleyways, carrying the rich smell of roasted garlic, butter, and roasted chicken from the back door of an upscale restaurant. The golden lights inside shimmered against polished windows, while outside, shadows stretched across cracked pavement. Ethan stood there, 15 years old, skinny to the bone, with a jacket 2 sizes too big and shoes whose soles had started to peel away. He pressed his hands into his pockets, but it didn't stop the biting chill. He wasn't supposed to be here. He should have been home finishing homework. But his stomach was clawing at him, twisting so tight it felt like knives. His mother had worked a double shift at the laundromat today, and still there had only been half a loaf of bread at dinner. She gave him the bigger piece, pretending she wasn't hungry, but he saw the way her eyes lingered on the crust he chewed. So he wondered, and when the smell of food drifted into the night, his legs carried him here. Through the back door, he saw them, women in pearls and sleek coats, men in suits tailored sharper than knives. Their laughter spilled into the night, clinking glasses, diamond bracelets catching the light. One of them stepped outside, a tall woman with raven hair pulled into a perfect bun, her lips painted crimson. She held a shiny black to-go bag in her manicured hand. Ethan hesitated, heart hammering. Every instinct told him to turn away. But hunger pushed harder. He swallowed, walked up a few steps, and with a voice that cracked under its own weight, he whispered, "May I have your leftovers?" The world went silent for a beat. Then laughter, not from her, but from her friends inside who had followed her out. A cool, stabbing kind of laughter, the kind that makes your skin crawl because you know it's aimed at you. "Did you hear that?" One woman chuckled. "He wants us scraps." Another muttered, loud enough for Ethan to hear, "Pathetic, probably just wants drug money." Heat rushed to Ethan's face. His throat tightened, but he didn't move. He stood there, hoping, just hoping, that maybe she would be different. The woman, Victoria, finally looked at him. Slowly, her eyes scanned from his messy hair to his broken shoes. A smirk tugged at her painted lips. "Leftovers? Sweetheart, nothing in this world is free, not even scraps. If you want something, you have to earn it. Remember that." And with that, she tossed the bag into the trash can beside her. Perfectly good food. Gone. His stomach clenched so hard it almost bent him in half. But what hurt worse was the shame. The sting of her words, her smirk, her friend's laughter. He wanted to scream, to cry, to tell her she didn't understand. But all that came out was silence. He turned, fists clenched so tight his nails dug crescents into his palms, and walked into the night. The pain. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The mattress springs groaned beneath him as he stared at the cracked ceiling of their tiny apartment. His mother's faint snores echoed from the other side of the room. But in his mind, he saw it over and over, her smirk, the laughter, the bag landing in the trash. His chest burned. It wasn't just hunger anymore. It was humiliation. It was fury. "One day," he whispered into the darkness, "one day I'll be the one they look up to. And when that day comes, they'll regret every word, every laugh." The very next morning, Ethan acted. He couldn't sit and wait. He started taking whatever jobs he could find, carrying groceries, washing cars, walking dogs, hauling boxes for neighbors. Every coin he earned, he hid in a jar under his bed. Some days it was a few cents, others a couple of dollars. At school, he was mocked again. His classmates sneered at his thrift store clothes, laughed at his worn backpack. "You think studying will change anything?" One boy jeered when Ethan borrowed books from the library. "You'll always be poor." Ethan didn't answer. He simply turned the page, because every insult became fuel. Every laugh added with the fire burning in his chest. Late at night, when the power went out because the bill was unpaid, he studied by candlelight. He read about business, about investments, about people who had started with nothing and built empires. He scribbled notes until his fingers cramped, whispering to himself, "If they can, I can. If they can, I can." By 17, Ethan had saved enough to start small. He bought used bikes, fixed them, and sold them at a profit. Then old electronics. Then broken furniture. People laughed again. Reselling trash? That's your future. But slowly, coins turned into bills. Bills into hundreds. Hundreds into thousands. He failed often. Deals went wrong. Bikes broke. Electronics wouldn't power on. Each failure left him gutted. But he refused to stop. Because every time he wanted to quit, he remembered Victoria's smirk. Her voice, "Nothing in this world is free." Years passed. Ethan was no longer the skinny boy begging for scraps. By his early 20s, he had opened a small repair shop. Then another. He lived modestly, still in the same neighborhood, still walking instead of buying a car. But behind closed doors, he was building something greater. He studied investments, poured his earnings into stocks, small properties, startups. Some flopped, some exploded. By 25, his name was whispered in business circles. The boy with nothing was quietly becoming a man with everything. But he never forgot that night. The trash can, the laughter, her face. Victoria. One afternoon, while closing a deal at a luxury hotel, Ethan passed through the lobby. His tailored suit hugged his frame perfectly. His shoes gleamed. His watch ticked with quiet precision. He carried himself with confidence earned through blood and grit. And that's when he saw her. Victoria. Older now, but unmistakable. Diamond earrings. Designer heels. Laughing with the same cruel tilt of her lips. She didn't recognize him. Not yet. But Ethan froze. The past slammed into him so hard he almost staggered. For a moment, he wasn't the man in a suit. He was 15 again, starving, humiliated, staring at a trash can filled with food he couldn't touch. His chest tightened, his jaw locked. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, because fate had delivered her back into his world. And this time, he wasn't the boy asking for leftovers. He was the man holding the feast. That night, Ethan couldn't shake the thought. He paced his penthouse apartment, city lights glittering through the glass. "This is it," he muttered. "This is the moment I've been waiting for." He poured himself a drink, staring at his reflection. The boy who once starved was gone. In his place stood a man powerful enough to turn her world upside down. But revenge couldn't be rushed. No, it had to be planned. Carefully, thoroughly. And when it came, she wouldn't just feel humiliation. She would feel what it meant to beg. Sometimes, revenge doesn't begin with rage. It begins with hunger. Hunger for food, hunger for dignity, hunger for justice. Ethan's hunger had carried him from scraps to skyscrapers. And as destiny placed Victoria back in his path, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment below. Have you ever been underestimated the way Ethan was? And make sure you subscribe, because the next part, that's when the real revenge begins. The boy who once begged for leftovers is no longer starving. He has become a man of power, wealth, and influence. And when fate put Victoria, the woman who once mocked him, back in his path, Ethan knew her downfall wouldn't be quick. It would be slow, precise, and unforgettable. If you've been following Ethan's journey, you know this is where things get really good. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and buckle up, because Ethan's revenge plan is about to take shape. The image of Victoria at that hotel lobby burned in Ethan's mind for weeks. He tried to focus on meetings, deals, and investments. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her crimson smile. The same smirk that once told a hungry boy that nothing in this world was free. Except now, Ethan owned more than she could ever imagine. And he wasn't going to waste a second chance. The first step was simple: learn everything about her. Ethan hired one of his trusted associates, Marcus, to dig. Marcus was ex-military, meticulous, and knew how to trace people without leaving a footprint. Within a week, Ethan had a thick file sitting on his desk. Victoria's life looked flawless on the surface. She lived in a mansion outside the city, drove luxury cars, and was married to a man who owned a mid-sized investment firm. They hosted charity galas, posed for glossy magazines, and acted like royalty. But when Ethan flipped deeper into the file, cracks appeared. Her husband's firm, struggling, drowning in debt, desperate for new investors. Her social circle, built entirely on appearances. If the money dried up, the friends would vanish. Her own businesses, vanity projects funded by her husband's loans, none profitable. On paper, she looked powerful. In reality, she was standing on a cliff edge. One push, and she'd fall. Ethan leaned back in his chair, tapping the file. "Perfect," he whispered. The following month, Ethan attended a gala. The chandeliers sparkled, violins played, and waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne. And there she was, Victoria. She hadn't aged a day in her arrogance. Her diamonds glittered as she laughed loudly, making sure everyone around could hear. But this time, Ethan didn't approach as a starving boy. He arrived in a tailored midnight blue suit, a watch worth more than her car glinting at his wrist. The room seemed to bend toward him. Investors, CEOs, politicians, all eager to shake his hand. Victoria noticed. Of course she did. People like her always notice power. Her eyes lingered a little too long, her smile a little too wide as she finally made her way over. "And who might you be?" she asked, voice dripping with false sweetness. Ethan smiled politely. "Ethan Cole." Recognition didn't spark yet. To her, he was just another wealthy man. But inside, Ethan felt a dark satisfaction. She had no idea who she was speaking to. Over the next few weeks, Ethan made sure their paths crossed again. At fundraisers, at business mixers, at charity dinners. Each time, Victoria grew friendlier, clearly interested in the magnetic young millionaire. Finally, she invited him to her mansion for a private dinner. Her husband, desperate for investors, laid out charts and figures, pitching his firm like a drowning man begging for air. Victoria sat beside him, her hand resting on his arm, smiling like a queen who believed she already owned a kingdom. Ethan listened. He nodded. He asked sharp questions that impressed him. And then he made his move. "I might consider investing," he said casually, "but I'd need to see more of your operation up close. Let's schedule a tour." The relief on her husband's face was almost pitiful. Victoria leaned in, eyes gleaming. "Of course, Ethan. Anything you need." That night, Ethan stared out the window of his penthouse, city lights flickering below. The boy inside him, the one who once begged for scraps, was screaming. This is it. Crush them. Humiliate her now. But Ethan silenced that voice. Revenge wasn't about speed. It was about precision. About building the stage so perfectly that when the curtain finally fell, the villain had nowhere to run. "She'll beg," he murmured to himself. "She'll know what it feels like." A week later, Ethan toured the firm. He walked through marble lobbies, sleek conference rooms, and buzzing trading floors. Employees straightened their ties when he passed. Secretaries whispered his name. Victoria's husband showed him graphs, charts, projections. Ethan pretended to be impressed. In truth, he saw desperation in every number. He smiled warmly, promised he'd think about it, and left. Behind him, Victoria whispered to her husband, "He's perfect. He'll save us." Ethan heard it, and his smile only widened. Ethan didn't just want revenge on Victoria. He wanted her entire world to crumble around her finances, her reputation, her pride. So he began quietly buying shares of companies tied to her husband's firm. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to create pressure. At the same time, he used connections to spread whispers in the investment world. Rumors, doubts, subtle nudges that made other investors hesitate. And while the firm struggled, Ethan grew closer to Victoria. He charmed her, outmaneuvered her, let her think she was winning him over. Every laugh she gave him, every smile she flashed, it all made the memory of that trash can sharper. Victoria thought she had found her golden ticket. Ethan wasn't just wealthy, he was influential. Young enough to admire her, rich enough to save her. She didn't remember him. To her, he was just another face in the endless crowd of admirers she had collected throughout her life. She never noticed the way his eyes hardened when she laughed too loud. She never saw the calculation behind his polite smile. And she certainly didn't realize that every step she took toward him was a step toward the edge of a cliff. But late at night, when Ethan was alone, the war inside him raged. Part of him wanted to end it now. Expose her, humiliate her in front of everyone, watch her fall. But another part wanted her to feel the slow burn, the anticipation, the fear. She taught me that nothing is free, he whispered to himself one night. So I'll teach her the cost, and it'll be everything she has. Weeks turned into months. Victoria and her husband leaned hard on Ethan, desperate for his investment. They invited him to dinners, parties, even weekend retreats. And Ethan played along. Polite, charming, helpful. But behind the scenes, he was pulling strings, tightening the noose around their empire. Finally, one night, Victoria cornered him at a gala. The champagne sparkled in her glass as she leaned close and whispered, "Ethan, we need you. Tell me what it'll take to secure your support." Her tone was different now. Not smug, not superior, but desperate. Ethan's eyes flicked a haze. For the first time, he saw something crack in her confidence. He smiled slowly. "You'll know soon enough." Revenge is not always about striking fast. Sometimes it's about watching your enemy step into the trap they don't even realize exists. And Victoria, she was already caught. She just didn't know it yet. If you're hooked, smash that like button and let me know. Would you drag out revenge the way Ethan is? I'll go straight for the kill. Subscribe, because in the next part, the real unraveling begins. Victoria thought Ethan was a golden ticket. She thought his wealth would save her failing empire. But what she didn't know was that every smile, every promise, every handshake was part of a trap. And tonight, the boy she once mocked was finally ready to make her pay. If you followed Ethan's story from hunger to power, this is the part you've been waiting for. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and get ready for one of the most satisfying revenge endings you'll ever hear. Victoria's voice trembled as she whispered at the gala, "Ethan, we need you. Tell me what it'll take to secure your support." Her desperation was like music to his ears. For the first time, he saw cracks in her diamond mask. Ethan didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch, watching her squirm, before finally smiling. "You'll know soon enough." And with that, he walked away, leaving her stunned in the glittering ballroom. In the weeks that followed, Ethan tightened his grip on their world. Behind the scenes, he continued to sabotage her husband's firm. Every deal they tried to close, every investor they approached, Ethan was already there, whispering doubts, offering better opportunities elsewhere, quietly ensuring that no lifeline reached them. Then came the masterstroke. Ethan announced, very publicly, that his investment group was launching a massive new fund, one that specialized in acquiring troubled firms. The financial press exploded with the news. Victoria's husband panicked. His firm was already on the brink, bleeding money. To survive, he needed Ethan's backing more than ever. And unknowingly, he ran straight into Ethan's trap. The day of the big meeting arrived. Victoria and her husband welcomed Ethan into their office with forced smiles. The conference table gleamed, but the tension in the room was suffocating. "Ethan, we've looked forward to this," her husband said, sliding a folder across the table. "This partnership could change everything." Ethan flipped through the papers casually, though he already knew every number inside. The firm was finished. They were begging for mercy. Victoria leaned forward, her tone sugar-sweet. "Ethan, you have the power to save us. Just name your terms." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. For a moment, he saw her not as a wealthy queen she pretended to be, but as a woman who once smirked at a starving boy and tossed food into the trash. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "My terms? Simple. I'll buy your firm outright." Her husband blinked. "Outright? That's impossible. That would mean it belongs to me," Ethan cut in smoothly. "Every desk, every floor, every dollar. Mine." Victoria's smile faltered. "Surely there's another way." "No," Ethan said firmly, his voice like steel. "Those are my terms. Take them, or watch your empire collapse." Within a week, the papers were signed. Ethan Cole was now the sole owner of Victoria's husband's firm. And just like that, the power balance shifted forever. At the announcement press conference, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Ethan stood tall at the podium, announcing the acquisition. Victoria and her husband stood off to the side, pale and hollow-eyed, forced to smile for the cameras as their legacy was swallowed whole. The humiliation was exquisite, but Ethan wasn't finished. A month later, Victoria received an invitation. A private dinner at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. The host? Ethan Cole. She arrived in her finest gown, diamonds glittering at her neck. But beneath the glamour, her nerve showed. The table was set for two. Ethan was already seated, calm and composed. "Victoria," he greeted, his tone polite but cold. "Sit." She obeyed, though her hands trembled slightly. The waiter brought out dishes fit for royalty: lobster, steak, truffle risotto. The aroma filled the air, rich and intoxicating. Ethan didn't eat. He just watched her. Finally, he leaned forward. "Do you remember a boy, about 15 years old, who once asked you for your leftovers outside a restaurant?" The color drained from her face. Her fork clattered against the plate. What are you talking about?" she stammered. Ethan's eyes burned with quiet fire. He was starving. He had nothing. He begged you, and you laughed. You threw good food into the trash rather than show an ounce of kindness. Silence. The restaurant around them blurred into nothing. "That boy," Ethan whispered, "was me." Victoria's breath caught. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ethan continued, his voice steady, calm, merciless. "You taught me something that night. That nothing in this world is free. That if I wanted anything, dignity, respect, survival, I would have to earn it. And I did. Every dollar, every deal, every empire I built. I earned it. Because of you." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. "Ethan, I didn't know." "No." Ethan cut her off, his tone sharp as a blade. "You didn't care. You had power, and you chose cruelty. And now you know what it feels like to beg." He stood, tossing a black card onto the table. "This dinner is on me. Consider it the leftovers you once denied me." And without another word, he walked away, leaving her trembling, humiliated, and broken. Victoria's husband's firm never recovered. Under Ethan's control, it was rebuilt, reshaped, and stripped of everything that once tied to their name. Victoria faded from the social scene. Her diamonds disappeared. Her friends abandoned her. Her mansion sold to pay debts. And Ethan? He didn't gloat. He didn't flaunt. He simply continued building, growing, rising, quietly satisfied that the woman who once marked his hunger now knew what it meant to starve. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about screaming, or fighting, or even winning in the moment. It's about patience. It's about watching someone who once laughed at your pain realize that every cruel word, every arrogant act, has consequences. Ethan didn't just take her empire. He took back his dignity. And in the end, that was worth more than all the riches in the world. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this, because trust me, there are plenty more where this came from.